So next we move to the Sustainability Fund. Welcome, Tony. So council will recall that we had a workshop on this, looking through the applications, asking any questions. There's a memo that's up on the hub with some additional information for those who had requested further information that wasn't available today. So Tony, I'll get you to give us a very, very brief intro, and then we'll go to questions.
Well, kia ora, tēnā koutou katoa. The Sustainability Fund is before you today. We've got a wonderful range of projects to be funded. We're really pleased to have a total of 28 projects being received by the council, and we're currently recommending 26. The purpose of this fund, just to remind you, is of supporting the climate change objectives for the council. We've, of course, declared a climate emergency, and we have a climate resilience strategy, and this is a fund that can help activate that from supporting community projects, business projects, school projects that are supportive of our climate change outcomes, which broadly speaking is related to sustainability, of course. So we are currently recommending to fund 26 projects and decline 7 projects, but of course this is up to this committee to decide what is received by who and how much, and we welcome your questions.
That's great, thank you very much. Pauline.
Yeah, I'd like to move an amendment to one of the recommendations, and that's to the one on page 87, the Be Awesome. I'd like to move that we grant them $10,000 for this, because I think it's a really good sustainability project, even though it's also biodiversity. There's a definite crossover between the two, and it also it's targeting children, and I think it's really important that we put these things in place early on so that they come through with the knowledge. So I'd like to move that.
Thank you. Now, Tony, we've had some really clear feedback from you, but it looks like there's going to be some funding. So do you think that if we were to fund it, that 10,000 would be an appropriate amount? Some advice on that? Would that see the project go ahead and all of that?
Sure, yes. So at the moment they're proposing to support beehives in about 8 schools, and so that presumably is around 8 or 16, depending on how many hives go into each school. And I've just done a quick calculation on you can actually hire beehives, commercially available at the moment, and that amount would be about $16,000. So if you were to hire those commercially, so I'm just giving you a sense of the scale of that sort of cost of getting beehives into schools. Obviously, that doesn't include an education program and all the other services that are wrapped around that. So if you were to fund that project, it would be in that sort of scale of support, I would have thought.
Yeah. Okay. So that's fine. So Pauline's, would you like to move the whole thing with that as an additional rather than moving it as an amendment?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. And do I have a seconder? Mike. Okay.
Sorry, what's the badge you've got on there, Mike?
Oh, my badge had bee kinds.
Oh, that's lovely.
And it's in the shape of a bee. Yes, it is. Okay, so Yanni.
So it's just reading the memo that we got back that we're establishing a technical review panel to explore renewable energy opportunities for council facilities, that community organisations that partner with council to activate facilities are eligible to apply for co-funding for solar panels. So like for those of us who have been involved with like volunteer library rebuilds, for example, where it's been pretty clear that there's no funding, can we now get those groups to apply for funding for solar for their buildings?
So just to clarify, I think that there's 2 separate pieces to that. One was around the technical assessment of applications, or idea, the feasibility of that approach, and the other is the funding. And the funding at the moment, I think, was really referring to this fund, that we could get community, as we have already received this time and also previously, applications for solar panels on community facilities. So that is to this committee to decide if they would fund that type of project. But what we're signalling to you is that because you asked to have some consistency across how we manage this, and so a working effective technical group is being set up to help evaluate opportunities and assess them when they come in.
Right, and would our social housing also be available to apply, or like maybe the housing trust if it's leased by us, or leased by the housing trust owned by us, or would it have to be ones that they fully own?
Most of our community funding pools are eligible to community not-for-profit organisations. A trust of that scale could apply to a sustainability fund, but I'd emphasise that with these community-based applications, even if it's onto a council building, that there's an expectation around co-funding, fundraising, etc. So perhaps we would accept an application, but it would be a co-funding scenario.
We have received an application from the Christchurch Housing Trust for putting in place electric vehicles as a transport option for the residents, and I think this committee declined it. So I'm just giving you an example of they have.
I mean, but like Brown Village had solar power in the 70s, but in terms of so put the housing to one side, obviously that's going to be bigger scale, but so if we got a proposal from all the volunteer libraries for solar, would it be best to get them all to come together, or would it be best to get each individual one to make the request? Like, what's the best way to progress that? I see that we've got some funding left over, so.
Yeah, can I suggest that because this is, that amount of funding wouldn't go anywhere near doing all of our volunteer libraries, for example, that we work with Tony on the proposal to do that, on the council facilities and the proposals for community groups to do that. And it may be that if it looks like it's a doable option to get solar on more of those buildings and that it's worthwhile in a climate sense, that we potentially look at other funding methods. Because otherwise we'd use up.
We could get Orion to co-share and fund.
We could do a range of different things, and there's Solar City that do solar on buildings where they own the solar still on the building, and you just pay for the electricity through it, those kind of things. So there's a range of different options there. I think that letting staff do the work behind that to see what would be the most viable option rather than doing it in an ad hoc basis.
Well, can we make a note? Then can we make a request that happens?
Well, the work is happening. If you'd like us to note it, that's fine.
So we're not at the moment. I suggest if you're wanting to take this forward, then a note would be good to request us to do that, because I think we're not currently working in that space as you just suggested. We're trying to set up a process for it. So we should I think the ideal thing would be to take this away, work up a system of
really cool.
assessment, and then work with you to explore the opportunities.
Okay, that would be good. We'll work out some work.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, cool.
Mike.
Thank you. So I just wanted to check something with you. If council were inclined to fund the Be Awesome project, would you recommend that we do a minimum of 16,000? Is that what you were saying?
Well, I was just giving you a scale of I think you were suggesting 10, so I was just saying it might actually, for that to be feasible, it might need to be a bit more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. 16. Yeah. Can we increase that to 16?
Sorry, I was doing the wording for the last thing. So
Increase the Be Awesome to 16.
Be Awesome to 16. Okay. Celeste.
Just in regards to the Be Awesome, in your recommendation, you note that it's not a native species and it competes with native varieties, so it doesn't necessarily have good ecological outcomes. Is that something that is quite an important consideration, because you've listed it there?
So the criteria are quite broad for us in this fund. Obviously, climate change is effectively sustainability. So this does fit within that broader range of opportunities, I guess. In terms of the ecological focus, the person who evaluated this had an ecological lens, and that was their perspective. And that's why we provided a memo with a slightly wider perspective on this project, given that it's effectively an education project.
So to add to that, the expert advice we received from one of our assessors is that there is no issue with bee numbers in Aotearoa, and that they in fact displace native bee species, and so he didn't feel that this was a good use of the fund. And then of course there's the issue with bees in schools with children who are allergic to consider. Again, of course it's your decision whether to fund it or not. That was his advice around the bee situation.
I'm just aware that there's other more directly sort of linked climate change initiatives within this list, so whether we prioritise one that doesn't necessarily have a strong ecological argument be my
That will be for
concern.
debate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
Okay.
very true. And that was their rationale. That's the first line, saying that this is loosely aligned to the climate change objectives. That's the first point.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I know that schools' health and safety stuff will probably dictate which schools those go into as well if it gets across the line. Andrew.
Thank you. The recommendation to decline Avon Takaro network and the suggestion that you would ultimately recommend a grant of $5,500 to pay for the event management. Noting, you're saying that World Rivers Day is in September, but noting this is for activity 2 months in the 2 months before September, so July and August, and you're recommending this be considered as part of the next round. When does the next round occur?
So that, at the moment, we aren't proposing to have another round. I guess that's before this committee. But if the committee decides to fund the full amount that we're recommending, then there would only be 60,000 left in the fund. And I guess this committee, they can, think about whether that's worth having another round, I guess, the effort involved.
So when you're saying would ultimately recommend, there was some wording here about the next round of, come to the first round of 2022, but what we're suggesting is there won't necessarily be a first round of 2022. I would have thought an organisation like this with a proven track record, we would want to reward them for and recognise the forward planning element of what they're doing. To say to them, we're going to decline you now.
It's questions rather than debate. You leave your arguments for it, but I'm happy to take an amendment or a move it to fund it now.
All right, so let me continue to ask short, precise questions then in that case, rather than explaining the rationale for them. So there isn't a funding, so can we confirm that currently there isn't a funding round in place for 2022?
That's correct. That advice is inconsistent with our current approach. That's correct. So the current approach is to say that there won't be a second round because we're allocating most of the fund in this round.
And that was my mistake, because I was the assessor that made that comment, and at the time I thought we were going to have another round.
All right, so if I was to put something forward today with staff support, it would be $5,500. All right, so can I signal that that's what I want to do in that case?
Pauline and Mike, are you happy with that being added? Being that there's no round at the beginning of next year and staff would recommend it.
So this is Avon Takaro Network for their 2022 World Rivers Day event to take place in July and August.
Yeah. So Mike, you happy to add that? Yeah. Okay, so could we add that? So is that 5.5? 5.5 for Avon Takaro. Yeah, for World Rivers Day. Avon Takaro Network.
Who was the group? Was it Avon Takaro Network for the World Rivers?
Avon Takaro Network,
That'll
yeah.
be fine. Yeah. And Mary, can we take the second sentence out of the number 5, community organisations, and just say that staff will provide advice to councillors on this for the technical thing. Okay. Any further questions? Aaron and then Mel.
Yeah, Tony, under 6.5, which is climate change impact considerations, with all the applications, would it be good to have a running total of how much that our net saving would be by funding each one? That way some projects might get more, going on Celeste's point, more funding than others.
Yes,
is that criteria used, and are we able to kind of calculate a net outcome?
So
especially given the damage the council's done this week by moving
Aaron, you've asked a
computer.
question. let Tony answer it.
Thank you. So, I mean, at the moment, our prioritisation process is indicated by those numbers 1 to 4. So we're really saying that a project that achieves a 1 has a higher level of benefit or a level of outcome that we're seeking. So the ones at the lower level 2 and so on have a lower level of outcome. But at the moment, it's not possible, I think, to give you a, if you like, a greenhouse gas emission reduction associated with these projects. I think that would be very difficult to do.
It's not even a potential, like this has the potential to be in this range, I think would be good. Otherwise, I mean, if there's no tangible outcome, why fund? I mean, it feels good, but why do it if it's not, when we've got like
But
some
Aaron,
serious ground to make up?
So we're the council that set up the fund.
Yep.
Yeah. So you've asked the.
I know we're not
question.
very measurable, but it's good to try and get that in there. Would be good because it's an easier sell to the public then.
Right. Okay. Any? So Mel next.
So that's a no.
I just
Well,
want
you've
to
had the
know
answer to the question.
if the remaining funding, can that be accessible on a discretionary basis?
So this was discussed at the workshop, and the answer was that as projects come to light through staff, we'll work with them and bring them to council in a separate report in a similar way to which we do with this discretionary response fund.
Right.
Do we need a note for that? No, you're just happy to bring those as discretionary. Okay, great. Any further questions, Tim?
Thank you. Just with regards to the Avon Takaro network, do you know what other funding they're getting from the council? Just because of its...
Just whether there's anything for that particular project.
With that
So
particular
you've got the
project.
history, but is it anything to do with this project? Or...
Yeah. So at the moment, we've listed what they've previously received, as you've indicated. We haven't got a list there of what they're currently receiving for this particular project. So that's
Or from council?
yes, that's correct. We don't have that. We do ask that of applicants to tell us what they've receiving from the council or others, and at the moment they haven't listed. They've listed their costs, but not other funders. But I imagine that the intention would be to have co-funding for this project to take place.
It'd be nice overall to get the overall funding from council from what groups are getting, just as a general.
Cumulative.
We do normally have that, and generally, if there isn't anything listed, it's because they haven't had any other council funding for this project.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
you
And
mean in total?
Yeah.
Yeah, in total, yes.
Yeah, and this is the committee that deals with the funding allocations for that, so we would have seen something if it had been allocated. But we're still the same councillors that would have made that decision.
So on the matrix, it highlights the last couple of years' worth of funding to this organisation. So there's been 2 lots of funding from the Red Zone Transformative Land Use Fund, and they received a $25,000 grant from this funding pool, albeit a few years ago when it was under the old name, and that's what they've received recently, but nothing for this particular project.
Yeah. Any last questions? No, in that case, this is moved and seconded. Is there any debate? Andrew.
Thank you. So, just to come back to this matter of the Avon Takaro network, I'll explain the rationale for picking this up now. And I'm glad that I did because, clearly this is a good project. If there isn't going to be a further funding round in the next year, I think it's appropriate that we pick this up now. And I also think it's good that we reward groups that have got a good track record and get well organised ahead of time. Very often we get applications coming to us for projects that, the project's almost underway by the time we get to approving the funding, or, a project that would fall over without funding, and there's a sense of real immediacy. Here we've got a group who are well organised. It's a project that will run over 3 months. And I think by granting this today, we're recognising both the track record of the group and the value in the work, as well as the fact that they've got well ahead of this and they're able to do their planning. So I'm pleased I picked that up, and I would encourage colleagues to support the change that's approved there.
Thank you. Then I've got Pauline.
Thank you. I'd just like to speak to the Be Awesome and Be Kind project. So this is a really good initiative, and I think it actually involves far more than just bees and beehives and honey. It's intending to actually get out there and plant berms and drains and stream banks that are actually council property, and it will be really helpful to us to do that and to get kids involved in that. It's a social enterprise which benefits tamariki through the education, and it's really, really important that they learn the importance of the food chain and how our food's grown, and the environment is connected by these beneficial insects. It may help to allay fears about bees as well. So it's also complementary to other food-related and education projects that we're working on. And it's working with schools, and it's supporting our local green economy. So I think this is a really, really good initiative, and I really do hope that councillors get behind and support the funding of it.
Thank you. Celeste.
Yeah, I support it in theory, but I feel like it might fall into a category of a feel-good project that doesn't really deliver on its intended kind of outcomes. My understanding is that native bees are under threat. DOC itself has commissioned a review about the potential threat. And actually there's been an explosion of bees since there is sort of a spike in the price for honey. We've actually got quite a massive sort of increase in the number of hives across the country. So whether this has sort of the law of unintended effects would be my concern. So I'd want sort of assurance that this wasn't kind of going to have some positive impacts in terms of education, but some negative impacts overall.
Right, thank you. Tim.
Yeah, thank you. Look, at this stage, I will support Andrew's amendment with Avena Takaro, because I don't know the funding history of this organisation as it stands for this year, and I think that is something that we do need to understand as an organisation. Their overall funding from the council for all the bits and pieces they're doing, I think it's important. However, with regards to the Be Awesome Limited, native versus exotic, I don't know enough, and I have concerns about that. There have been information with regards to the native bee population dwindling, and so I just can't support this at the moment for that. And also, it is good to have education and to support that, but there is also a downside to this which I would be worried about. So without more further information, I can't support the B.
Yeah, I'll put that
Awesome.
one separately.
Thank you.
Anyone else on these? No? Okay, in that case, I will put, let me see, can we just scroll down? What about, just so I can see all of, sorry, the other way, up. I will put 1 to 3 to start with. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against?
Can you just put against 3?
Oh, okay.
Go. You do 1 to 6 or just 1 to 4 right now?
Okay, so it's going to get messy. That's fine. What we'll do is just number 1 and 2 to start with. Okay, numbers 1 and 2, all in favour?
Aye.
Any against? Declare that carried. Number 3, which is the transfer of any remaining unallocated monies through to next year. All those in favour, aye. Aye. Any against? No. So can we record Sam, Jamie and Phil? Anyone else? And Tim against that one? So you're against transfer of funds?
Because it means that won't be used up. They said, right?
No. Even with this, we can still have discretionary stuff. It's only stuff that's not used by the end of the year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. And Catherine, where are you at on that one? Sorry, in the middle of your drink. You're all good? Okay. So declare that one carried. Number 4, approve the grant of 16,000 to Be Awesome Limited. Those in favour?
Aye.
I don't disagree.
Those against?
No.
Okay, I think that's going to need a division.
Leanne distracted me. So.
Yep, just for number 4.
All right.
Councillor Templeton,
Carl, no.
Councillor McClellan, Councillor McDonald,
No.
Councillor Johansson, Councillor Galloway is absent, Councillor Donovan,
No.
Councillor Coker, Councillor Chen, the Mayor, Councillor Scandrett?
No.
Councillor Major? Councillor Kewen? Councillor Goff?
No.
Councillor Davidson? Councillor Cotter?
Aye.
Councillor Chu?
No.
Councillor Turner?
Yes.
Okay, so we have 7 yes, 8 no, 1 abstention.
Declare that lost. Okay. And then I'll. Am I able to put 5 and 6 together? Do people think? Okay, I'll put 5 and 6 together. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Any against?
I'm against 6. 4, 5, no 6. They're two different.
Oh, so I didn't think there was going to be a problem with 6. Okay, so any
I'll just no against 6. It's not sorry.
okay, Sam and Jamie against 6, and everyone else all good.
Yep.
Just checking the wording on 5. Like, I'm not sure we really wanted to establish a technical review panel. Like, we actually just want staff to work. I mean, they're going to do that.
It's noting.
Right.
Do you want
This
to
is this is a piece of work. I mean, staff
says
are the
are,
technical review.
we're asking for? It says they are.
It's already
This is what they're doing. This is what staff are doing.
Change it to staff.
Bruce, advice from Bruce.
We're already, as part of our electricity procurement planning, which will need to come back to finance. Looking at this, the report is going to ELT next week, which very much addresses all of these items. So it's underway already.
Great. Okay.
Too late.
In that case, number 5, all in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Any against?
No.
Aaron, record that. I declare that carried. And for number 6, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Any against? No. Jamie and Sam. Catherine, you're all good? You're all good? Cool. And declare that carried.
Could I request that staffs to send us a memo on that native bee, exotic bee information, please?
We can get some more information.
It would be worth following up.
Okay.
Celeste raised it with us.
Okay. Right.